Hello and welcome back to The Deep Dive, coming to you from the Human with AI channel. Today, we're tackling something pretty fundamental if you actually want to get value out of generative AI. Everyone's talking about the power of these big models, but, people are quickly realizing the real magic, the unique impact for your company, well, it doesn't just come from installing the latest tool off the shelf.
That's absolutely right. The truly transformative potential, it really unlocks when you manage to combine the, well, incredible capabilities of these LLMs with the content that's unique to your business, that proprietary knowledge, the stuff only you have.
Exactly. And where does most of that unique stuff live? Well, it's usually not sitting nicely in a database table, is it?
Not usually, no.
It's buried in what we just lumped together as unstructured data. Mountains of emails, contracts, internal reports, meeting recordings, support tickets.
All that stuff, random files scattered everywhere.
Yeah. And here's the core challenge we're going to dig into today. Using that unique unstructured data is key, especially with approaches like retrieval augmented generation or RA.
But, and it's a big but, the data itself is almost universally messy, often poor quality.
Messy is putting it mildly sometimes. It's out of date, it's copied in 12 different folders, it's inaccurate, incomplete, and often just, well, structurally chaotic.
And RAG, which works by retrieving relevant documents to answer a question, it really needs high-quality data to give you accurate, reliable results. You feed it junk, you get junk back.
So our mission for this deep dive, drawing on the source you shared, is to unpack why unstructured data quality is such a persistent headache, what quality even means here, and explore some, practical ways both human and AI-assisted to actually deal with it, so you can unlock that Gen AI value.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so let's start by really hitting home why this proprietary unstructured data is, well, the secret sauce for Gen AI value in a business. Why isn't just having a powerful LLM enough on its own?
Well, because your unstructured data is what makes the AI distinctive to you. It teaches the model about your specific products, your services, your internal ways of doing things, your customer interactions. It's not just general knowledge scraped from the web. It's your company's brain, essentially.
Right. And critically, when the AI is grounded in your actual documents, your facts, it's far less likely to just make stuff up, to hallucinate.
Exactly right.
And that distinctiveness, that accuracy based on your own reality, that's where the real economic value comes from, isn't it? I think you mentioned a quote from a chief data officer saying something like, you won't get much return just installing Copilot if you don't feed it your own good stuff.
Precisely. It's the difference between, say, a general purpose assistant and one that's highly specialized for your specific environment, your needs. Whether that's better customer service, faster legal reviews, smarter marketing support, or feeding product development. That internal knowledge is just indispensable.
And the most common way companies are trying to get that knowledge in there is RAG, right? Retrieval Augmented Generation. Fundamentally, the LLM gets the query, uses your internal search to find relevant documents from your stash, and then uses those documents as context to generate the answer.
It's a powerful approach. But it all hinges on that retrieval step.
Which, as you said, is completely dependent on the quality of that underlying unstructured data.
If the system pulls up irrelevant, outdated, or just plain wrong documents, because that's what's there, the answer it generates is likely going to be pretty useless or even harmful.
Okay, so this brings us right back to the core problem. Unstructured data quality. Why is it so often bad? And maybe how does it compare to the quality issues we sometimes see even with structured data?
Well, look, let's be honest. Many companies haven't even fully cracked structured data quality yet. Yeah. The stuff in databases running transactions.
True enough.
But unstructured data is fundamentally tougher. It just wasn't created with data governance or AI consumption in mind. Think about how emails or presentations are made.
Right. And we've sort of been here before, haven't we? Thinking back to those big knowledge management pushes in the, 90s and 2000s?
Oh, yeah.
Most of those efforts, frankly, didn't really result in the kind of lasting organization people were hoping for.
They didn't. And, current surveys show leaders are very aware of this. They see poor data quality as the single biggest barrier holding back their Gen AI initiatives. Gen AI didn't create the mess, but boy, did it shine a spotlight on decades of neglecting unstructured content.
Okay, so ideally, the best long-term fix is preventing bad data from being created in the first place, right?
Absolutely. That means training the people who write the documents, the emails, the reports, getting them to think about things like tagging, structure, clarity right from the start.
That's the sustainable dream.
That's the goal. But if you want to get value from Gen AI now, using the mountains of documents you already have via REG, you simply have to invest time and effort into improving the data you've got. There's no way around it.
So what does data quality even look like for, say, a PDF contract or a meeting transcript? It feels fuzzier than just making sure a date field is formatted correctly.
It is fuzzier, but it still requires a very deliberate, focused effort. You need leadership saying, yes, this matters. You need dedicated professionals overseeing it. You need clear responsibilities assigned for who owns what content and a real commitment to continuously making it better. Without those things, the quality probably isn't going to magically improve.
That quote you mentioned from Alex Bork seems spot on. When AI doesn't work, it often reveals flaws in the human system.
It really does. It's not just a tech problem. It's deeply organizational. It reflects how information gets created, shared, managed, or often mismanaged within a company.
And the effort involved is significant.
Hugely significant. There's an estimate floating around that something like 80% of the time spent on an AI project is actually dedicated to the data side. Data prep, data cleaning, data curation.
80%? Wow. That sounds like a lot, but when you hear examples like that Morgan Stanley team.
Right, the one in the Philippines.
Yeah, they spent years curating and preparing their huge library of financial research reports for an AI assistant project. This was way before Gen AI was everywhere.
And that incredibly detailed upfront data work was exactly why they could then deploy a RAG-based solution relatively quickly when the technology caught up. They'd already built the foundation.
So for Argy specifically to work well, what are the key requirements for those documents it retrieves?
Okay, they need to be directly relevant to the user's query, obviously. You want minimal duplication. Finding 5 copies of the same, slightly different, outdated report isn't helpful.
Right.
And crucially, the information inside those documents needs to be complete, needs to be accurate, and it needs to be up to date.
And as Seth Early put it, you've got to supply context as much as possible.
Yes. And that's a massive hurdle for unstructured data. Unlike, say, a row in a database with clearly defined fields like customer ID, order date, total amount, which give it inherent context.
A document is just text.
Exactly. It doesn't come neatly packaged with its own context. And large language models, even the best ones, aren't naturally great at figuring out which piece of information is the best or most authoritative among similar documents, or at something called entity resolution.
Okay, explain entity resolution a bit more. What's that about?
It's the challenge of figuring out if different ways of mentioning what seems like the same thing in the real world actually are the same thing. So if one document mentions John Smith, another says J.A. Smith, and a third refers to Mr. J. Smith at the same company. Entity resolution tries to determine if those are all the same person.
Ah, I see.
Structured data often handles this much better because you have things like unique IDs, foreign keys, data models that link related information together clearly.
Right. Structured data benefits from having that schema, that blueprint. It makes it easier to find things. You usually know who's responsible for which data element, and there's often a data dictionary defining what terms mean.
Precisely. The CarMax example in the source really highlights this. For their unstructured data, like vehicle descriptions, repair notes, things like that, they realized they needed to create a similar level of clarity. They had to define who owns this data, who produced it, who stewards it. They needed quality standards, lineage like where did this info come from, access controls, retention policies.
All the stuff you'd ideally have for your structured data, but it's almost always missing for random files on a shared drive.
Totally missing. And unstructured data often lives in silos, right? Spread across different departments, different systems. There's rarely a central dictionary defining terms consistently. Naming conventions are all over the place.
Like that advertising agency example where they couldn't even agree internally on what counts as a pitch.
Exactly, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And maybe the most fundamental point is that these documents were usually created for a completely different reason than being fed into an AI. A contract is written for legal purposes, for negotiation, not to let an AI easily extract the key risk clauses.
That makes perfect sense. It reminds me of that Charles Handy quote, "Information gathered for one purpose is seldom useful for another." You have to actively make it useful for the new purpose.
You really do.
Okay, so the problem is clear. It's messy, it's hard. But the good news is the article we're looking at doesn't just stop there. It lays out a pretty disciplined, actionable 6-step process for actually improving unstructured data quality, specifically for AI projects.
Yes, it's about embedding quality thinking throughout the whole life cycle.
All right, walk us through it. What's step one?
Step one is critical for not getting overwhelmed. Address problems one by one. Don't try to, boil the ocean and fix every document in the entire company simultaneously.
That makes sense.
You absolutely have to prioritize. Focus on AI projects with high potential business value, and then factor in the feasibility. How difficult and expensive will it actually be to get the necessary data into shape?
So it probably makes sense to start where the data is already reasonably okay, where the lift isn't quite so monumental.
Absolutely. Look for what Alex Borick calls highly curated data products whenever possible. The WB Services example is perfect here. They started with refrigeration model schematics from manufacturers.
Okay.
These documents are used all the time. They have a small, consistent vocabulary. People trust their accuracy. It was a manageable, high-value place to begin.
Smart. Okay, what's step two?
Step two is identify and assess the specific data you plan to use for this particular project. And do this early. Data is your foundation. The article really pushes a less is more philosophy here. Be skeptical. Don't just throw every document that seems vaguely related into the pot. You need a solid reason to trust a document before you let your AI learn from it.
And how do you realistically assess potentially millions of documents? You can't read them all.
No, you sample. You get subject matter experts to dig into a small representative set of the documents. Are they full of errors? Inconsistent language? Are they confusing? Or are they actually pretty clean, clear, and accurate?
And based on that sample,
You make a call. Keep the clean stuff, toss the bad stuff. And honestly, if the sample reveals the data is just in terrible shape, or you simply can't find enough trustworthy content for your use case, well, that might mean you need to rethink the project's scope, or maybe even shelve it until the data situation improves.
that sounds kind of harsh, but necessary. You can't build a skyscraper on quicksand. All right, you've assessed the data, decided to move forward. What's step three?
Step three is assembling the team. Because, as we've said, unstructured data quality requires human judgment, human curation. A small central team of data scientists or AI experts probably isn't enough on their own.
Yeah.
The suggestion is to make it broadly participative. Get the people involved who actually work with this information day in, day out. The subject matter experts, the people creating the documents, they often have the best gut feel for what quality and relevance really mean in their domain.
That makes total sense, like that Scotiabank example where the actual contact center staff took ownership of curating the documents used for their customer service chatbot.
Exactly. They're the ones on the front lines. They know precisely what clear, accurate, up-to-date information looks like from the customer's point of view.
Okay, team assembled. Which brings us to step four, preparing the data itself. And this is where the article talks about combining the human element, what it calls D1, with AI assistance, D2.
Correct. Let's start with D1, the human contribution. What's their role here?
Yeah, what do the humans do?
Okay, humans are absolutely crucial at this stage. First, stakeholders need to get together and agree on the definitions of key terms for this project. What exactly do we mean by a contract, a proposal, a customer in this specific context? Documenting this consensus in a business glossary is vital.
This sounds like Davenport's law kicking in. The more important the term, the harder it is to get everyone to agree on a single definition.
Precisely. It often requires what some people call data arguing, those sometimes tough but necessary conversations, to hammer out agreed-upon meanings for the really important terms. You need that consensus. This human layer, D1, is also where the real curation happens. Humans decide which specific documents are the most authoritative, the best ones to use. They tag documents with meaningful metadata like topic, creation date, maybe an authoritativeness score. They score content based on criteria like how recent it is, how clear it is, how relevant it is to specific tasks. Remember that Morgan Stanley team scoring documents on 20 different criteria? That's D1 work.
Okay, so humans set the rules, agree on the terms, pick the best examples, apply that initial layer of judgment and metadata. How does the AI D2 help in this preparation step?
Right, so once those human standards and criteria are established, you can bring in AI, the D2 part, to apply those rules and standards at scale, much faster than humans could.
Okay.
Gen AI can be really good at certain tasks here. It can summarize documents according to the purpose humans defined. It can classify documents into the categories humans agreed on. It can automatically tag key entities or concepts within the text based on the glossary.
Like the CarMax example, using AI to translate all the different manufacturer jargon into their standard internal descriptions.
Exactly that kind of thing. It's perfect for standardization once the standard is defined by humans.
And AI can help build knowledge graphs too, right? To map out relationships between bits of information, which can make our RAG retrieval faster and smarter.
Yes, absolutely. AI is also great for deduplication at scale, finding potentially redundant copies for humans to review. And you can use AI to re-rank the search results that RAG provides, using those human-defined scores for recency or authoritativeness to push the best stuff to the top.
Okay, so it sounds like the pattern is humans figure out what good looks like, define the important stuff, make the nuanced judgments. And then the machines provide the scale and the efficiency to process huge volumes of data according to those human rules.
That's the sweet spot, exactly. AI, on its own, isn't necessarily great at knowing which of three similar-looking documents is actually the best or most trustworthy without that human guidance or a clear set of rules. Humans are still needed for those qualitative, nuanced decisions. Use the machines to drastically speed things up and lower the cost per document processed, but always build it on a foundation of human judgment and business context.
All right, the data is prepared using this combined D1, D2 human AI approach. What's step 5?
Step 5 is developing your application and critically validating it rigorously. This involves the technical build of the RB system, of course, but the validation part is non-negotiable. You absolutely need thorough testing before you let this thing loose in a production environment, especially if it's dealing with sensitive information or impacting important decisions, or if you're in a regulated industry.
That 50 golden questions method sounds like a practical way to do that. Define the absolutely critical questions that AI must get right based on your curated data, test it, and see how well it performs.
It's a great starting point. And importantly, this validation isn't just a one-off check before launch. It needs to be ongoing. The underlying LLMs change, your data gets updated, you need to keep checking.
Right.
The European insurer example really drove this home. During validation of their new claims knowledge system, they found that different internal sources actually disagreed on the answers to key questions.
Oh, wow. Like the customer contract said one thing, the call center script said another.
Exactly. The contract, the scripts, the internal knowledge base articles, and the actual procedures followed by the claims department, they weren't always aligned.
So what did they do?
That validation process forced them to make a decision. They defined the claims department's interpretation as the official gold standard, the single source of truth for those particular answers.
Ah, okay, so validation helps uncover inconsistencies.
Yes. And it forces the organization to decide what the correct answer actually is when there's conflicting information. They then had to go back and update everything else, the chatbot's knowledge, the training materials, maybe even look at rewriting contract language to align with that defined gold standard. It drove real process improvement.
It's a powerful side effect. Okay, finally, step 6. Supporting the application and building in ongoing quality management.
Right. No application is perfect on day one. You need a plan for the long haul to maintain and continuously improve data quality. This definitely includes having a qualified human in the loop available.
Especially early on.
Especially early on, or for particularly tricky or high-stakes queries where the AI isn't highly confident, you need human oversight.
And presumably a system to catch errors or bad responses.
Yes, you need a mechanism to trap errors, figure out why they happen, was it bad data, a confusing query, an LLM glitch,
Yeah.
and perform root cause analysis so you can fix the underlying issue.
You also need to really understand the people using the RAG system, right? Your internal customers.
Absolutely. How are they using it? What do they consider a good, helpful answer versus a bad one? Gathering their feedback is crucial for identifying quality gaps you might have missed.
And then closing the loop, using all that feedback to go back and train the people who are creating the source content in the first place.
Exactly. Teaching them about the quality standards needed for AI, the importance of consistent tagging, maybe guiding them to use central approved repositories instead of scattering files everywhere. It becomes a continuous improvement cycle.
Okay, so bringing this all together, it seems pretty clear that RAG, when combined with a company's own unique proprietary content, is really emerging as a key way to get tangible value from generative AI.
Yeah, it looks like it's here to stay as a core enterprise approach.
But, and this is the big takeaway, that value fundamentally hinges on feeding these powerful models high-quality, unstructured data. You just can't point an AI at a messy file share and expect miracles.
It's definitely substantial work. There's no sugarcoating that. It takes organizational commitment, getting different teams to work together, sustained focus. But the article makes a convincing case that it is achievable for organizations that are willing to tackle it systematically, following steps like these.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting, I think. A final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. The article suggests that when AI projects fail, it often shines a light on pre-existing flaws in our human systems, right?
Mm-hmm. Our inability to agree on basic definitions, our messy internal processes, the lack of clear ownership for information.
Given that fixing unstructured data quality forces us to confront these very fundamental human and organizational challenges, it makes you wonder, are the purely technical hurdles of AI actually the smaller part of the equation compared to the challenge of just getting our own house in order?
Or maybe, you could flip that, is the very effort required to define, clean, and structure our data an effort spurred on by the huge potential prize of AI? Actually, the necessary catalyst, the thing that finally forces us to make those organizational improvements that unlock true AI value creation. It's a fascinating interplay between the human systems and the technology itself.
Definitely something to think about as you look at your own organization's data landscape.